last 3 decades, I think it's quite safe to say, have been monumental in the type of structural change that the global economy has enjoyed, but has also had to come to terms with. I would suggest that there's numerous reasons for the structural change, but for the most part, quite simply, one can point to integration. And there's many metrics one could use to highlight the extent to which the world has become so much more networked, so much more wired, so much more closer in terms of trade or finance or other mechanisms of economic or political diplomacy. But the one that I'm fond of is if you consider that, say, 15 years ago, the global economy, in other words, the integrated wealth, income producing world, comprised roughly 1.5 billion workers. Today, that global economy comprises a little bit more than 3 billion workers. That is, in my view, at the heart of so much of the economic and political discourse that we've been trying to disentangle and get our heads around. Very lay economists immediately will wonder if you simply bolt on an additional 1.5 billion people to a system, trade or finances, what does it imply for some key ratios, key metrics, say like the labor to capital ratio? That is a very fundamental question because it speaks to consequences for prices, for volumes, and whether that's in the goods markets, services markets, commodities, or even in financial products, financial markets. So what has happened over the last 15 years, or a little bit more, aside from this great doubling in the global workforce, is, well, at least until the mid-2000s, the mid-noughties, was a halving in the capital to labor ratio. In other words, for a given quantum of workforce, the available level of capital that was available had suddenly shrunk. And that is going to create, for some while, not with permanence, but for some while, a twist to a variety of economic measures, volumes, and prices. Consider, for example, and if we look at international economics for some guidance, this sort of bolting on process would suggest that commodity prices relative to, say, manufactured goods prices will enjoy favor. In other words, it recognizes that in this bolting on, you bring a large quantum of labor that is ordinarily low-skilled and comparatively cheap. You've also bolted on a market with a significant quantum of savings, and for some while still, a continued propensity for savings. So commodity prices, as international theory would dictate, would rise relative to, say, manufactured goods. And it is the same favor that, say, capital prices, capital equipment prices will enjoy over manufactured goods. The twist of this bolting on process will also revolve around the prices of, say, labor. Skilled labor will find greater reward, whereas unskilled labor, because of its surplus emanating from these emerging or dynamic markets, is plentiful, and therefore unskilled labor finds displeasure in terms of relative price change.